Hello, listeners. It is another beautiful Friday evening. Thank you so much for joining us on another insightful episode of our program, Fiscal Interventions and Economic Growth on Armor Gate Radio Communications. I remain your host, Titilola Ogunsona. Today, we have the privilege of having an economist joining us on our discussion this Friday evening. We'll be coming with a lot of insight on the topic, implications of income inequality on economic growth of nations. Kindly welcome Mr. Ibrahim Aguirre on today's program. Mr. Ibrahim Aguirre, thank you so much for joining us today again for another insightful episode.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma. I really appreciate that.
Okay, so listeners, Mr. Ibrahim Aguirre is a seasoned economist. He has a lot of insight, on economic matters. He's passionate on issues that got to do with financial issues, financial economic development issues. And don't mind the voice. The voice sounds very, very soft-spoken, but it's really loaded with a lot of insights. Okay, so we'll just jump on the topic today. I'll start with this, Mr. Ibrahim, that one of the macroeconomic objectives of any government, which we talk about macroeconomic objective, includes, to reduce income inequality in its economy. So I want to ask you, how do you view the concept of income inequality as well as its measurement and relevance in formulation of fiscal policies?
Yeah, thank you very much, ma, for having me here. Income inequality is something that is very crucial, very important towards every economy. So, to my own perspective, how I view income inequalities, its measurement, and why it matters in fiscal policy formulation.
Okay.
Income inequality, it is an unequal distribution of income across individuals. So, and we know it is part of what is actually affecting Nigeria in many aspects. So, when there is a kind of disproportionate distribution of income, whereby some people were being benefited for their high income and some people were being deprived. So, and as a result of that, it will lead to some certain things whereby some people will be shortchanged in terms of access to some certain things, such as health facilities, quality, education, and other kind of social life that enhance economic development in every nation.
Okay.
So income inequality is the unequal distribution of income across individuals and households. So it is both normative concern, that is, it is something that is actually like affecting fairness. When we say fairness, so when a kind of economic system is working whereby there is no any kind of fairness in terms of distribution of that income, so that is just a simple definition, to my own perspective, the simple definition of income inequality. And then again as well, and as a part of economic aspects of it, in the sense that when some certain people were being deprived towards some certain things, so it is also kind of what income inequality. So when we now look at its measurement, so as an economic, major things that we normally use, and we need to know where some people normally get it wrong sometimes, is that sometimes people make use of poverty as a kind of measurement towards inequality. But as an economist, I felt the best thing and the most common one, let me say the common one that we normally use as an economist, is the Gini coefficient. So that Gini coefficient, and there are some others as well, like the Palmer ratio, all these things. People who are economists, when we talk of these Gini coefficients, now there is what we actually call a kind of Lorentz curve and perfect equality line. So a kind of area between these things. So it is a kind of measure that will be used to determine the Gini coefficient. And we also have the Palmer ratio as well. So this Palmer ratio, you can use the top percent, whereby you can use top 10%, the bottom line. So in a situation where we are using the bottom line, when we now see that in terms of this proportionate of income distribution, whereby some certain people we are being skewed towards, let's say we have proportionate, let's say we have the population of 100%, let's say population of 100 now, about 40 or 50% of them were being subjected to low income, whereby just small percentage were being subjected to a kind of higher income. So in that aspect now, it is what we call income inequality. So in terms of this fiscal policy now, it is something that is very important in fiscal policy. That is why whenever the government is trying their best in order to formulate any kind of economic policy, most especially the fiscal instrument aspect of it, they need to consider this income inequality. So they have to determine what kind of tax measures do we use. Is it the progressive tax? So in that aspect now, they need to determine some certain things. So these fiscal instruments now, when we talk of this fiscal instrument, it's something that, that is when we say the tax and the public spending. So they are the principal tools that the governments have to alter disposable income distribution. So it is very crucial a lot. Fiscal policy, it is something that is very crucial. So in that aspect now, government can make use of public spending and tax policy in order to adjust this kind of inequality that is affecting people. So that is why fiscal policy, it is something that is very important a lot. So in that aspect now, when they really know that, okay, income inequality is being distributed. So in order to do this now, there are some certain things that government might use. They might use the progressive income taxes. So that is one of the measures. And they can also use property taxes as well. So through these property taxes as well, they will use that in order to withdraw some kind of wealth from some certain people in order to enhance some people who were being subjected to low income. You can see now it is more of like taking from some certain people through taxes and pump it to some certain people as well through public spending. So with that, government will try their best. It is part of what we then during that COVID-19, it is part of what the American government did. Whereby there are some certain people that they know that they were very wealthy in nature. They tax their wealth. So with that aspect now, they use it to enhance those who doesn't have a lot. So with that, they were able to create some certain social investments in people, such as the benefits, the small scale administration, what they did, the SBA. So all those things are kind of why fiscal policies actually matters. And why do they arrive at this? It was as a result of what? The fiscal policy. So that was why I said it is something that is very matters a lot when we talk of this income inequality.
Thank you so much, listeners. I've told you that with Mr. Ibrahim Aguirre is always a lot of insight, is always a lot of information that we have to take in today. I like your definition of income inequality, that you said in simple terms is lack of fairness in distribution of income. And I like that. So it means that anytime we have high level of income inequality, according to Mr. Aguirre, it means that it's high level of unfairness in such an economy. And talking about his measurement, he also allowed us to pointed out the fact that a lot of people like to use poverty, as a measure. But for us economists, poverty is not a measure, it's not the best measure of income inequality. Rather, you mentioned some measurements, and one of them already used is the Gini coefficient, and you also mentioned other things like a Lawrence score. Now, you also mentioned something which I also find interesting, that fiscal policy is very crucial, plays a major role when we talk about income equity, that is, fairness in distribution of income, or when we are talking about income inequality, when there's unfairness in the level of distribution of income among the people in a country. And according to you, you're saying that the two policies, the two instruments for fiscal policy that a government can deploy is the tax and the public expenditure. And we said that, for instance, for the tax measures, am I right, Mr. Aguirre, that government can actually deploy progressive tax, or using what we're talking about property taxes, so that you are taking away from the rich, those in the top rank in terms of income generation, and going back in terms of government expenditure into those areas that are low, that like talk about the low income groups. So from what you have said, in fiscal policies, fiscal measures does not just play It just doesn't play just a passive role. Rather, fiscal measures, really matters a lot when you talk about achieving one of the macroeconomic objectives of any government, which is to reduce the level of income inequality in such an instance. Now, thank you so much, Mr. Agiri. Okay, that's just a brief recap of what you have said, your answers to my first question. Now, I like what you said. You mentioned the issue of Nigeria. You also mentioned what the US did during the COVID, how they were able to balance a lot of things out. Now, I want to ask you this question. Would you say the issue of income inequality is majorly peculiar to only developing economies? So invariably, are you saying that? I want to ask you, because what some people believe, when you talk about income inequality, is only peculiar, it's typical only to developing economies. Is this your position as well?
Thank you very much. When we talk of this income inequality, it is a global issue. So to my own perspective as an economist and as a researcher, I would say no to that question, that is income inequality is mainly peculiar to the developing countries. I would say no. It is actually a global issue. It is more of like we saying that, inflation. Is there any country without inflation? But the point of view is that the rate of inflation is what actually differs. So inflation cannot be zero in any country. So that is how income inequality as well can never be zero. So it is the gap and the number, the percentage of this inequality that now matters. So even many advanced countries as well, let's make reference to some practical examples. Are you telling me that countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, the France, the China, are you telling me that some people are not homeless? Some people are homeless. So it is part of the thing that we can use as well to measure this income inequality. But what actually makes it to differ in, between the developing countries and the developed world, it is the proportion of those who are facing this kind of income inequality in the developing world and the underdeveloped world. It is very high. Whereby in the developed world as well, they are also facing this, but it is very minimal. So what now? Part of what makes it to differ is the mechanism and the state of capacity to respond. Like I said, the mechanism whereby the government is using or they are adopting in order to fight this income inequality was actually made to differ. So like I said, then during the COVID-19, when the US government, when they realized that there are some certain people, they were not benefit, there are some certain people being deprived from high income, they tried much as possible to build up some policy suggestion as well. So that was why I said what makes it to differ is the mechanism and the state's capacity to respond. It is very important as well. So the state's capacity to respond. So what makes the developing world to different from the developed was actually because of what the state's capacity responses to the situation whenever there is a kind of income inequalities. So we all know that the developed world now, they typically have a broad tax transfer system. So they have a kind of broader tax transfer system, and this actually helped them a lot in order to compress this disposable income inequality. So compared to the developing world, so all these things, the capacity for them to respond to this kind of issue actually make it what differ. So the problem exists everywhere. Global, it is a global issue. So now the policy toolkits and institutional capacity, that is what actually differs. So I don't know, maybe, so that's not actually me. It is a global issue. So it is just very high in some countries than some others.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Agiri. You have heard from him. Our expert have told you that the issue of income inequality is not peculiar to only developing economies. And like what I did a research recently, I think was last episode I mentioned it, that we also have developed countries where they have high level of income inequality of wealth inequality. And a country like the US, United States, interestingly, also, has this issue. However, Mr. Agiri mentioned something very germane, and that is the issue of the level of the rate of responsiveness. So such that if in a developed country they know there's an issue with income inequality, the ability to be able to respond. And you mentioned something I like, that they also have a broader tax transfer system, okay, which we might not actually have that in developing economies. But for all in all, it is a global issue, not just peculiar to developing economies alone, but we need to look at the level of responsiveness of our fiscal measures in developing economies. Now, I know that you like to use Nigeria as a case study a lot, so I'm going to ask a follow-up question on this. For a developing country like Nigeria, are there specific tax policy that could be fueling the rate of income inequality? I know recently you had some tax reforms, but do you think there are specific tax policy, that could be fueling the rate of income inequality in the country?
Yeah, there are a lot of. Nigeria is actually facing a lot of it. For instance, now every reliance on several designs can be regressive or distribution worsening. So for every tax policies that government makes, it can be something that is what can be regressive or distribution, or make the distribution to become worsening. And there are some policies as well, it will make something to be progressive in nature. So that was why I said the tax policies, to me, the tax policies in Nigeria is also fueling this kind of income inequality. For instance, now let's look at the heavy reliance on indirect taxes. For instance, now the VAT, the excise duties, it is actually affecting people a lot. So, for instance, now like yesterday, I was actually discussing with one of my colleagues whereby we are making reference to like how the tax policy have been affecting people's income. Whereby we said some people were in academic gatherings, like even government parastatals or people who are working in a private firm, whereby we tried much as possible to like make use for some salaries range in order to measure that, okay, this kind of people that are working here, if they want to buy a Corolla that worth 8 million naira now, for how many years will they save? We realize that some people will have to save for like 8 years before you can avoid a Corolla of 8 million naira. So you can see, and part of what is actually causing this, it is a kind of the tax policy, the heavy reliance on this indirect tax, like the VAT now, the value added tax, also like the excise duties as well. Look at the excise duties. Those people who are importing, though the government have it in mind that they want to use these excise duties to curb the issue of importation. But whereas before you can say you want to put up a measures in order to curb the issue of high importation, there must be a mechanism in place in such a way that you must enhance your local production as well. But why a policy why do we have a kind of policy that is putting a high percentage on the excise duties now in order to curb importation? But whereas there is no any kind of substitution through our local made items. So you can see now, part of it now, it is part of what is actually fueling this income inequality. Those who are importing, they couldn't import, and the little they can import, they would rather do it in such a way that those who will suffer for it were those who were consuming those things. And part of these things now, and whereas those who were consuming it, their income is not increasing. So with that now, it will actually fuel this income inequality. That was why I said some policies like Nigeria, this policy is actually fueling this our inequality issue. Evidence now, look at the evidence and policy review from Nigerian notes in order to narrow tax bases low relative to peers. There are many policies like that. I will keep on saying that excise duties. Nigeria need to find something to that. They need to ensure, other than we saying that. And then again, let me make reference to weak personal income tax coverage as well and enforcement. So weak personal income tax coverage. As well, there are a lot of people who were really earning in this Nigerian, but whereas their tax, the amount that they are paying as tax doesn't move in any kind of correlation with the amount that they are earning. So there should be a kind of policy in order to what to ensure that this tax coverage affects everybody in such a way that your tax level, the amount you be paying as tax, must move in correlation with your income. I'm not saying that government should not do any kind of tax holiday or any kind of tax. Because part of the way government can enhance or motivate and investors, most especially foreign investors, is through tax holiday. But what do we say to an individual? So higher income earners, they need to pay tax, and also informal higher earners as well. Most of them they escape this tax. So this policy needs to be adjusted, rather than we just putting a kind of heavy policy on the VAT and the excise duties as well. But we need to much concern about individuals as well, most especially the high income earners. So I'm not against those who are earning high, but government needs to do it in such a way that level of inequality, for every country with high level of inequality, there would always be a kind of chaos in that country. For instance, now let's make use of Nepal as an example. This inequality as a result of corruption was the major things that made Nepal to be in this kind of their situation now. As a result of this, Gen Z putting a kind of government revolution and all. So all those things, they are very jamming in every economy. So in Nigeria, that excites me. We need to do something to it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Age. I'm laughing here because I know that with you, because the essence of having a program is to look at practical issues. How does it affect the common man? How does it affect everyone, in businesses, individuals? And what you have said, I like that, because what we are talking about specifics here. And you have said that every reliance on indirect tax is an issue. You mentioned the issue of VAT, and you laid more emphasis on the issue of excise duties. Yes, we know that for any government, when you want to reduce high dependence on importation, you want to increase your excise duties as a way to curb importation. But definitely it's an indirect tax, but of course, you realize that in most cases, the consumers of such products would have to bear the brunt, of high cost. And if you look at Nigeria, you said it. So if it's high, what does it do to your income? Because we also talk about necessities. I want to say, use a typical example of getting a Corolla, for instance. Okay, so it means that transportation is basic, it's not luxury. You want comfort, you want to transport yourself easily. So if we have to save up because of high level of excise duties, that is going to worsen the level of income inequality. And I like what you said again. You talked about for high income earners, and Mr. Giri said that it doesn't hate high income earners, but he's just saying that your tax must have a positive correlation, am I right, with your level of income. So it means that when your level of income is very high, the higher you earn, the tax should be really high, okay, but not too high or not too choking, but reasonably, high. And you don't want a situation where we find ourselves in a situation of Nepal. And you also said something about the informal sector. So my next follow-up question will be on informal sector, but we'll take a short break, a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Harmogate, founded in 2008 out of a desire to build transgenerational structures for organizations, institutions, and nations. We have worked with large businesses, international development organizations, and public sector ministries and agencies. Harmogate, our uniqueness is that we do not just work for you, we work with you. For example, we do not leave you to the task after sourcing talent that will help the new hire settle into robust leadership development programs. Plus, we are technical experts in advising and supporting institutions on strategy and leadership, artificial intelligence, strategic human resource management, public sector reform, finance, audit and tax, FAT, and strategic communications. We do all this and more out of a desire to transform nations through institutions and organizations. For further inquiries, email contact@thearmorgate.org or call +234 810 999 6666 +234 807 957 4151 and +161 0504 6026 www.thearmorgate.org. Armorgate, building to endure and transforming nations through institutions and organizations.
Thank you so much for staying tuned. Yes, we are back from the short commercial break. For those just joining us, the program is Fiscal Interventions and Economic Growth, and of course, the stations Armorgate Radio Communications. I am Titilola Ogunsona, still the host of the program. Today, we are looking at the implications of income inequality on economic growth of nations, and to join us in the discussion today is Mr. Ibrahim, an economist with a lot of depth and breadth on economic matters. And that's been an interesting session, Mr. Aguirre. Now, before we went on the short break, one of the answers you gave to us was that, look, that's also the issue of informal sector. Government should find a way to bring them to the tax net, and I know that government of the country, Nigeria, is looking at that in the new tax reform. But I still want to also broaden it to other developing, countries, okay? And it takes me to about the final question on today's episode, if that's what we see. Let's see how time will take us, okay? The informal sector, Mr. Aguirre, in many developing countries constitutes a major part of the business environment. So what role would you say the informal economy plays in a country's tax system and level of income inequality?
The informal sector.
Okay.
It is the informal sector is one of the key bone, is one of the backbone for every economy, most especially the developing countries. In many African countries, the informal sectors is the major source of employment for every individual. So you can see how important the informal sector is.
Okay.
Even in 2024, according to a survey by the PwC, the survey states that the micro, small and medium enterprise, our MSMEs, they account for approximately 80% of employment in Nigeria. You can see how very vital and germane the informal sector is.
True.
So just look at it now, the SMEs, and we have a lot of SMEs in Nigeria that some of them were not even registered. While some were registered. So for us to be having a kind of a situation whereby these SMEs alone, we are employing about 80% of the economy. So we can see how germane vital they are in every economy. Okay. So it is something that is very important. Now let's look at some mechanism now. For instance, now the revenue side of it now. Large informality shrink the formal tax base. It is part of what is affecting Nigeria a lot. We can see that most of all these informal sectors, some SMEs, they engage themselves in a kind of tax evasion. They engage themselves in types of tax evasion as well, whereby there are some firms in Nigeria, some SMEs, they were not even paying any tax at all, despite all effort by the government in order to formulate some kind of tax policy. They have been dodging it a lot. So all these things were kind of things that affect our level of inequality. And like I said earlier, when tax is being collected in an appropriate way, in a progressive manner,
yes,
it will actually, the informal role, like I said, the informal role, they play a lot of roles when we talk of this tax issue of it towards income inequality. Like in Yoruba, they do normally say something that Owo Ojumo. A lot of people normally like Owo Ojumo. A lot of government agencies and parastatals, they don't normally look at it. But they actually made a lot. All these market traders, the artisans, the small farms, most of them, they engage in tax evasion. So the informal sectors, most working Nigerians earn their living through the informal sectors. So that was why I made reference to that survey that 80% of the employment in Nigeria was actually from the informal sector, most especially the SMEs. So they were very important in an economy in such a way that they create jobs and keep the economy alive. Yes. But few of them pay their tax. Few of them pay their tax and also miss out on the pension and the health insurance. So some of them they don't pay tax. Some of them there's nothing concern them about pension. While some of them the health insurance they miss out a lot. So in this regard now, because governments are not reaching them easily, so it's as a result of this now being the fact that the government, do I say the government is not putting a kind of proper policy in order to tax them or to get the little tax from them. So this makes the government to now lean on the indirect tax like the VAT, the excise duties, which can be harsh on the poorest because a lot of people cannot consume a standard goods again. So due to this value added tax, so the individual will be bearing the burden because government is not taxing the informal sector the way it should be. And if they do in most cases, most of them engage in this evasion. So as a result of it, it will reduce the government revenue. So and for the government to enhance its revenue, because the major source of government revenue is tax, and for them to improve the level of revenue, they would rather lean on the indirect tax, such as the excise duties, the income, the customs duties, the value-added tax, and all. So the solution is simply to ensure that there should be a kind of policies or regulation in place in order to simplify the registration of all these firms. Government should try in that aspect as well. The solution is through simplifying the registration, the use of mobile technology. The use of mobile technology is something that is very important as well now for government to ensure that they are getting this tax from these informal sectors, and also to link these small traders to micro pensions and health covers, because when the government educates them and they link them to these micro pensions and health covers, they will know the value of tax and also facing like the tax of their the income. So as they are paying their tax, government should try as well in order to put some certain things such as infrastructure in order to enhance their income as well, because the major reason why many Nigerians are avoiding tax or they engage in tax evasion is as a result of the fact that most of them, they ask themselves, the tax I've been paying, what is being used for? So some of them dodge this tax. So when government takes from them, it is a game of win-win game. So give and take. When government takes from them, government should also give them through infrastructure. So as a result of this infrastructure, such as the good road network system, stable electricity, this would also enhance their income as well. It will be a motivating factor for them to pay their taxes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Giri. A lot has been said in a short time. Your response, you have said that the informal sector, especially for developing economies, play a major role. You refer to the PwC report that 80% of MSMEs, that's the micro, small, and medium enterprises, account for 80% of employment in the country. That is huge. I imagine, having this percentage, of firms evading, talking about tax evasion is really high, and since they create jobs and in your word they said they keep the economy alive, I would say that's the engine room of any country, okay, because the economic wheel of a country. So if it's like that, what can be done to bring them into the net? And you mentioned something like money, daily money. They earn money on a daily basis. Okay, so that's a lot in there. So it means formalizing of the informal sector or standardization of the informal sector would also help. And like you mentioned, two things I like that even the pension and health insurance become issues for some MSMEs. What can government do? That aspect I like, because that has to be a win-win situation in this case. Simplification of the registration of firms is important. You said the use of mobile technology. Definitely, you cannot undermine, or emphasize the use of mobile technology, use of IT in the business world today. And you also said that government can help to link MSMEs to micro pension and health covers. I like that. And in terms of the win-win game you mentioned, like government will not provide everything, but we expect government to improve the level of infrastructure so that it provides the right enabling environment for businesses to thrive. And one thing you said, and I've also heard it over and over, okay, for developing countries, is that they want to say, what is the need for us? Why should I pay tax? What am I getting in return? So it means that if the level of infrastructure can be improved, simplification of registration process, that would also help in terms of fiscal measures, and where government would have to de-emphasize, for developing economies, de-emphasize the use of indirect tax, because that could also further, lead to high level of income inequality. I've enjoyed myself. I always say that anytime I have to interview Mr. Ibrahim Ogiri on economic matters, I like his practical dimensions to issue, his ability to actually break down economic matters so that the non-economists can actually understand and roll with and comprehend is top notch. Okay, I wish I could go on and on, but definitely we'll conclude this discussion next episode. Thank you so much, Mr. Ibrahim Ogiri, for honoring us with your presence.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, and I hope that when we call you, beautiful, awesome. I hope that when we call on you next week for this concluded episode, you will just please honor us with your presence.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So, listeners, this is all we can take. We'll drop the content here. Hope to join us same time next Friday. It's 5 p.m. WAT. And remember to join my other colleagues on the programs that run from Monday through Thursdays, 5 p.m. WAT. Very interesting, very engaging sessions. You learn a whole lot. And also remember that if you have missed other episodes of previous, program series, we just have all of them on our YouTube page. It's Amorgate. I want to learn more about us. Please just go to our social media handles. Link is Amorgate. Facebook is Amorgate. And of course, we have you covered your consulting, your communications needs. We have you covered the website to just check out is www.theamorgate.org. And if you have any feedback from us, we appreciate it. We treasure your feedback. It's a gift, it's not there for granted. And you have any questions, any area we want us to shed light on, please just send all of your comments, questions, okay, to contact@theamorgate.org. So I find my way to your devices again next Friday. I want to wish you a blissful weekend, and I say stay blessed. Bye.